Emily Watson stared out the small, frost-covered window of her mother's cramped council flat in Sheffield. The morning light struggled to break through the thin curtains, much like Emily's own dreams seemed to struggle against the weight of their circumstances. At 22, she knew life wasn't going to be easy, but she refused to let poverty define her future. The tiny kitchen echoed with the sound of her mother Margaret preparing another modest breakfast. Worn linoleum floors creaked beneath Margaret's tired feet, a testament to years of hard work and quiet resilience. Emily watched her mother, knowing the sacrifices she had made since her father's unexpected death 7 years ago. "Another slice of toast?" Margaret asked, her voice gentle but tired. Emily nodded, her mind already racing with the day's challenges. 2 jobs awaited her: a morning shift at the local bakery and evening cleaning at the community center. The bakery job meant early mornings, with the smell of fresh bread and the rhythmic sound of mixing machines. Her hands, once soft, were now calloused from kneading dough and scrubbing kitchen surfaces. At the bakery, Emily worked alongside other young people from similar backgrounds. Some had given up on their dreams, accepting that life would always be a struggle. But not Emily. Every spare moment was a chance to learn, to read, to dream. During her lunch breaks, she would pull out a well-worn law book, its pages marked with sticky notes and carefully highlighted passages. Her colleagues would often tease her. "Law books?" In this place, they'd laugh. But Emily understood something they didn't: education was her ticket out. She had seen how the system worked against people like her family. Workplace discrimination, unfair treatment, limited opportunities, these were not just words to her, but daily realities. The community center where she worked evenings was a different world. Clean, organized, filled with possibility. While cleaning, she would listen to community meetings, absorbing every conversation about local issues, legal challenges, and social justice. The center's notice board became her inspiration: job postings, scholarship opportunities, legal aid information. Margaret worried about her daughter's relentless pursuit. "Don't push yourself too hard," she would say, placing a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. But Emily knew the cost of not trying was far greater than the cost of trying and failing. Her shoes were worn, her clothes modest, but her spirit was unbreakable. Every rejection letter became fuel for her determination. She had applied to numerous legal training programs, scholarships, anything that might give her a chance to study law. Each envelope brought either hope or disappointment, but Emily never lost her resolve. Nights were the most challenging. After a long day of work, she would sit at the small kitchen table, surrounded by borrowed law books and handwritten notes. The room would be silent except for the scratching of her pencil and the distant sounds of the Sheffield neighborhood. Her bedroom was small, with a single window overlooking a narrow street. Posters of inspirational women lawyers covered the walls, her silent mentors, her motivation. A bulletin board tracked her goals, her savings, her progress. Every penny saved was a step closer to her dream. The local library became her second home. Librarians knew her by name, often setting aside legal journals and books they thought might interest her. They saw something special in Emily, a hunger for knowledge that went beyond mere academic pursuit. Her mother's support was unwavering. Despite working as a part-time cleaner and struggling to make ends meet, Margaret always found ways to support Emily's dreams. Sometimes it was an extra slice of toast, sometimes it was a quiet word of encouragement. Emily understood that her journey was about more than personal success. It was about creating a path for others who came from similar backgrounds. She wanted to show that where you start doesn't determine where you can go. As the winter morning light slowly filled the small flat, Emily finished her toast, packed her worn bag, and prepared for another day of work and hope. She knew the road ahead was long and challenging. But she was ready. Her story was just beginning. The Community Legal Aid Center's bulletin board had been calling to Emily for weeks. A small poster, almost hidden behind larger announcements, advertised a scholarship for aspiring lawyers from underprivileged backgrounds. Her fingers trembled as she carefully copied down the details, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and fear. Margaret noticed the change in her daughter. Emily's late-night preparations, the constant checking and rechecking of her application, the nervous energy that filled their small flat, all spoke of something important. "Are you sure about this?" her mother asked one evening, watching Emily carefully fill out the scholarship forms. Emily nodded, her determination etched into every careful letter she wrote. The application demanded more than just academic achievements. It asked for personal statements, stories of struggle, and dreams of making a difference. She wrote about her family's challenges, her mother's resilience, the community that had both struggled and supported her. Weeks passed like years. Each morning, Emily would rush to check the mail, her hopes rising and falling with every envelope. The bakery became a place of nervous energy. Her colleagues noticed her distraction, the way she would sometimes stand still, lost in thought, a half-kneaded piece of dough forgotten in her hands. The local library became her sanctuary. Librarian Helen, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, had become something of a mentor. She would help Emily research, provide additional resources, and offer quiet words of encouragement. "You're different," Helen would say, "you see the world not just as it is, but as it could be." On a cold Tuesday morning, everything changed. The postman's knock seemed louder than usual. Emily's hands shook as she opened the envelope. 1 page. 2 pages. Her eyes scanned the words, unable to believe what she was reading. Scholarship. Accepted. The world seemed to stop. Margaret found her daughter standing in the middle of the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. No words were needed. A mother knows. A dream was about to become real. The legal aid center where she would begin her training was nothing like Emily had imagined. Modern, bright, filled with people who seemed to genuinely care about justice. Her first day felt like a dream. Professionals who looked like they had never known struggle now sat alongside her, listening to her story. Her first mentor, a senior lawyer named Richard Thompson, saw something special in Emily. "It's not just about knowing the law," he would tell her. "It's about understanding people. And you understand people in a way many of us never will." Training was challenging. Long hours of study, complex legal terminology, case studies that seemed to challenge everything she knew. But Emily was relentless. She took notes in her worn notebook, asked questions that made her instructors pause, and approached every challenge with a determination that impressed even the most seasoned lawyers. Her classmates came from different backgrounds. Some were wealthy, some were struggling. But Emily discovered that passion for justice knew no economic boundaries. She made friends who shared her vision, who believed that law could be a tool for real change. The scholarship wasn't just financial support. It was a lifeline, a bridge between her past and her future. Every lecture, every study session, every late night of preparation was a testimony to her mother's sacrifices, to the community that had supported her. Margaret watched her daughter's transformation with quiet pride. The girl who had worked 2 jobs to support their family was now becoming a professional who could change lives. During family dinners, which became less about survival and more about celebration, Emily would share her experiences, her hopes, her dreams. "I want to help people," she would say. "People who don't have a voice. People who are lost in the system." Her mother would simply smile, knowing that her daughter was becoming exactly who she was meant to be. The unexpected opportunity had arrived. And Emily was ready. Her journey was just beginning. Legal training was nothing like Emily had imagined. The first few months were a whirlwind of complex terminology, endless case studies, and challenging lectures that made her question everything she knew about the world of law. Her classmates came from privileged backgrounds, private schools, well-connected families, and comfortable lives. They wore expensive suits and carried designer bags. Emily arrived in her modest clothing, carrying second-hand textbooks and a determination that burned brighter than any designer label. Professor Martin Roberts was known for his tough approach. He seemed to enjoy challenging students, breaking down their confidence with razor-sharp questions. Many students feared him, but Emily saw something different. Each challenge was an opportunity to prove herself. During one particularly intense lecture about workplace discrimination, Emily raised her hand. Her personal experiences gave her a perspective different from her classmates. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "the law looks perfect on paper, but real people's lives are more complicated." The classroom fell silent. Professor Roberts studied her for a moment, then nodded. Exactly, he responded, a hint of respect in his voice. Her practical understanding began to set her apart. While other students memorized legal texts, Emily connected laws to real human experiences. She understood discrimination not as a theoretical concept, but as a lived reality. Her arguments were not just legally sound but deeply human. Nights became a blur of study and preparation. She would sit in the small library, surrounded by legal journals, her mother's packed dinner beside her. Margaret would sometimes bring her extra coffee, watching her daughter transform before her eyes. The Community Legal Aid Center became her second home. Emily volunteered during weekends, helping people who couldn't afford expensive lawyers. An elderly man facing unfair pension cuts. A single mother fighting workplace harassment. Each case added depth to her understanding of law. Her professors started noticing something special. Richard Thompson, her primary mentor, saw beyond her academic performance. "You're not just learning the law," he would tell her. "You're understanding its human impact." Emily specialized in community law, driven by a passion to help those who felt voiceless. Her research papers began to attract attention. She wrote about systemic barriers, exploring how legal structures often inadvertently disadvantaged marginalized communities. Her classmates, initially skeptical, began to respect her unique approach. Some would ask her to review their papers, recognizing her exceptional analytical skills. The girl who once felt like an outsider was now becoming a respected voice in her class. Financial challenges remained constant. Emily continued working part-time, balancing her studies with practical work. But her scholarship and part-time job allowed her to focus more on her education. Each month felt like a small victory. During a critical presentation about social justice, Emily shared a personal story about her community. How limited legal knowledge often meant limited opportunities. Her words resonated beyond the classroom walls. Students and professors alike listened, understanding the human story behind legal terminologies. Professor Roberts, who once seemed intimidating, became one of her strongest supporters. "You have something special," he told her after one remarkable presentation. "You see law as a tool for change, not just a set of rules." Her mother watched her transformation with quiet pride. The girl who once cleaned bakeries and community centers was now becoming a voice for those who needed legal representation most. Emily's journey wasn't just about becoming a lawyer. It was about understanding how law could be a powerful instrument of social change. She saw beyond courtroom victories, she saw human stories waiting to be heard. As her training progressed, Emily realized her path was about more than personal success. It was about creating pathways for others who came from similar backgrounds. She was becoming the lawyer her younger self would have needed. The learning journey was challenging, complex, but incredibly rewarding. Emily Watson was no longer just a student. She was becoming a catalyst for change. Her story was still being written. Thomas Miller was just another name in the long list of workers facing workplace discrimination. A single father of 2 young children, he had been working at Sheffield Manufacturing for 15 years. One morning, without warning, he was fired, supposedly for performance issues, but Thomas knew the real reason was something else entirely. Emily received his case through the Community Legal Aid Center. When Thomas first walked into her small office, she saw more than just a potential client. She saw a reflection of struggles she knew too well: the fear of providing for a family, the vulnerability of workers without powerful connections. "They said I wasn't meeting targets," Thomas explained, his hands trembling slightly. "But I've been the most consistent worker in my department for years." His eyes told a story of confusion and hurt. 2 children depended on his income, and now everything was uncertain. Emily listened carefully. Her years of working multiple jobs, of understanding systemic challenges, kicked into high gear. She knew this wasn't just about Thomas. This was about challenging a system that often discarded workers without a second thought. Investigating the case became her mission. She gathered documentation, interviewed colleagues, examined company records. Each piece of evidence revealed a pattern of discrimination that went beyond Thomas's individual experience. The manufacturing company, Sheffield Industrial Solutions, was a powerful local employer. They had a reputation for cutting costs and removing workers who didn't fit their narrow definition of productivity. Thomas, a 45-year-old worker with a decade and a half of service, had become inconvenient. Emily's preparation was meticulous. She documented how Thomas consistently met his targets, how his performance reviews had been positive for years. She uncovered subtle patterns of age discrimination, showing how the company preferentially hired younger workers at lower salaries. Her mentor, Richard Thompson, reviewed her case preparation. "You're building more than a legal argument," he told her. "You're telling a human story." His guidance helped her refine her approach, transforming legal documentation into a compelling narrative of injustice. The day of the hearing arrived. Emily knew the odds were challenging. A small legal aid lawyer against a company with expensive corporate attorneys seemed like David versus Goliath. But she had something more powerful: genuine passion and irrefutable evidence. During cross-examination, Emily's questions became strategic weapons. She dismantled the company's arguments piece by piece. Company representatives shifted uncomfortably. Their polished responses began to crack under her precise questioning. Thomas sat quietly, hope gradually replacing his initial fear. His children were in the courtroom, a silent reminder of what was at stake. Emily caught their eyes occasionally, understanding the human impact of this legal battle. Her closing argument was a masterpiece of legal reasoning and human empathy. She didn't just present facts, she illustrated the real-world consequences of workplace discrimination. How losing a job meant more than a paycheck: it meant dignity, family stability, community respect. The judge, initially seeming skeptical, began to listen differently. Emily's arguments were not just legally sound but morally compelling. She represented not just Thomas, but countless workers who faced similar invisible barriers. When the verdict arrived, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The judge ruled in Thomas's favor, not just reinstating his job but awarding compensation for wrongful termination. More importantly, the ruling set a precedent for future workplace discrimination cases. Thomas's children hugged him, tears of relief and joy mixing with disbelief. Emily watched, understanding that her work was about more than legal victories. It was about restoring human dignity. Her mother Margaret, sitting in the back of the courtroom, smiled with quiet pride. The girl who once cleaned bakeries and community centers had become a voice for those who needed protection most. The local community began talking. A young lawyer from a working-class background had challenged a powerful company and won. Emily's victory was more than personal. It represented hope for everyone who felt voiceless. As she walked out of the courthouse, Emily knew this was just the beginning. One case could change everything. One voice could make a difference. Her journey was just getting started. The victory in Thomas Miller's case became more than just a legal triumph. It sparked a movement in Sheffield, inspiring other workers to speak up against workplace discrimination. Emily Watson, once a bakery worker with a distant dream, was now a symbol of hope for the community. News of her success spread quickly. Local newspapers ran stories about the young lawyer who had challenged a powerful manufacturing company. People who had previously felt powerless began to see a different possibility: that justice could be within their reach. Emily didn't stop with one case. She established a small legal support center in the heart of her community, offering free consultations to workers facing discrimination. Her office was modest: a few chairs, some second-hand filing cabinets, but filled with an energy of possibility. Margaret, her mother, watched the transformation with quiet pride. The little girl who once struggled to imagine a better future was now creating opportunities for others. During family dinners, she would share stories of people she had helped, her eyes bright with passion. The scholarship fund became her next big project. Emily knew that her own journey had been possible because someone had believed in her. Now, she wanted to create the same opportunity for other young people from working-class backgrounds. Local businesses and community leaders began to take notice. Her work wasn't just about winning legal cases, it was about changing systemic barriers. Schools started inviting her to speak, showing students that their background didn't define their potential. Richard Thompson, her mentor, became her strongest supporter. "You're doing something remarkable," he would tell her. "You're turning law into a tool for social change." His connections helped her expand her impact, opening doors that had previously been closed. The scholarship fund grew quickly. Each year, she would interview potential candidates, looking for those with passion and determination. She understood that potential wasn't about perfect grades, but about genuine commitment to making a difference. Thomas Miller's children became her first success stories. Inspired by her support, they began dreaming of careers in law and social justice. Emily represented more than a lawyer to them, she was proof that change was possible. Community workshops became her platform. She taught people about their legal rights, helping them understand complex legal language in simple terms. Her sessions were always packed, with people eager to learn and understand their protections. Local politicians began to take notice. Emily was invited to discuss workplace policies, her practical experience offering insights that academic research couldn't capture. She spoke about systemic challenges with a clarity that was both compassionate and direct. Her work wasn't just about individual cases. It was about changing the entire system. Each legal victory, each scholarship awarded, each workshop conducted was a step towards broader social change. Margaret's small council flat became a symbol of transformation. The walls that had once witnessed struggle now celebrated success. Family gatherings became celebrations of possibility, with Emily sharing stories of people she had helped. The local library where she had once studied became a tribute to her journey. Helen, the librarian who had supported her early dreams, created a special section highlighting local community changemakers. Emily's story was prominently displayed. As years passed, her impact grew. Young lawyers began to see her as a role model, understanding that legal practice could be about more than winning cases, it could be about creating social change. Her scholarship fund supported dozens of students from working-class backgrounds. Each recipient carried forward her mission of using education as a tool for transformation. Thomas Miller's case remained a defining moment. But it was just the beginning of a much larger journey. Emily had discovered that true justice wasn't about winning in court, but about creating systemic change that gave people genuine opportunities. The little girl from the council flat had become a beacon of hope. Her story wasn't just her own, it belonged to everyone who had ever dreamed of something better. As she looked out over Sheffield, Emily knew her journey was far from over. There were more stories to be told, more people to support, more systems to change. Hope, she had learned, was the most powerful legal argument of all. Her story continued.